What if the strongest form of intelligence isn't something you're born with, but something your brain builds to survive? Instantly notice who feels uncomfortable, who's pretending to smile, and who's hiding something they can't put into words. Others remain calm when everyone else is panicking. They seem unusually perceptive, almost impossible to fool. Most people call this intuition. Some call it emotional intelligence. But psychology suggests there may be something much deeper happening. Sometimes the people who understand human behavior the best are the ones who had to understand it just to feel safe. If that's true, then some of the qualities you've spent years thinking were flaws may actually be evidence of a mind shaped by extraordinary adaptation. Today, we'll explore the hidden psychology behind what researchers often describe as trauma-shaped intelligence. And by the end of this video, you might understand yourself in a way you never have before. Before we begin, it's important to understand one thing. When psychologists study childhood adversity, they don't only look at the emotional scars people carry into adulthood, they also study something far more fascinating: how the brain adapts. A child growing up in a stable environment usually learns that the world is predictable. But when life becomes emotionally unpredictable, when love feels inconsistent, when home never feels completely safe, the brain changes its priorities. Instead of focusing only on learning, it becomes incredibly good at detecting danger. Over time, this constant observation creates abilities that many people mistake for natural talent. In reality, they were survival skills first. Let's look at the first signs. Sign 1. You notice what everyone else misses. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed something felt off? Nobody said anything. Everyone looked normal. Yet somehow you could feel tension hanging in the air. Later, something happened that proved your instinct was right. This isn't magic. It's pattern recognition. People raised in unpredictable environments often become extremely sensitive to tiny behavioral changes. A pause before someone answers, a forced smile, a change in someone's tone. Small signals that most people ignore become impossible for you to overlook. Your brain learned long ago that missing those signals could have consequences. Now it notices them automatically, sometimes before you're even consciously aware of it. Ironically, the same habit that once protected you can also make you appear incredibly emotionally intelligent. Sign 2. You read emotions beyond words. Most people listen to what someone says. You pay attention to everything else: their posture, their breathing, the way they avoid eye contact, the smile that disappears too quickly, the confidence that sounds rehearsed. Without trying, your mind compares all these signals together. When they don't match, something inside you notices immediately. Psychologists have found that children who constantly monitored caregivers' emotional states often develop exceptional sensitivity to nonverbal communication later in life. As adults, that survival skill becomes an unusual ability to understand people beneath the surface. The difficult part? Sometimes you understand people better than they understand themselves. And carrying that awareness can feel surprisingly lonely. Pattern interrupt. Think about someone you met recently. Did your first impression turn out to be right weeks later? If that happens to you more often than coincidence would explain, keep watching. The next signs reveal why your brain may process the world very differently from most people. Sign 3. Crisis brings out your best thinking. Here's something that confuses many people. During emergencies, while everyone else starts panicking, you become strangely calm. Your thoughts slow down. Solutions appear faster. You know exactly what needs to happen next. But when life becomes peaceful, that's when your mind becomes restless. Silence feels uncomfortable. Calm almost feels suspicious. Why? Because your nervous system spent years believing that quiet moments were temporary, that sooner or later, something would go wrong. Psychologists describe this as your brain becoming highly efficient under pressure. Stress became familiar, predictable, even comfortable. Peace, on the other hand, is something your nervous system may still be learning to trust. Sign 4. You became an expert on human behavior without realizing it. Most people judge actions. You naturally search for reasons. When someone lashes out, you wonder what pain they're hiding. When someone constantly seeks attention, you ask what they're missing inside. When someone controls everything, you imagine the fear they're trying to escape. Over the years, your brain has quietly collected thousands of behavioral patterns, not because you wanted to study psychology, but because understanding people once helped you predict what would happen next. That habit never disappeared. It simply evolved. Today, people may describe you as insightful, wise, or unusually understanding. But few realize those qualities weren't learned in classrooms. They were built through experience. and that's what makes them so powerful. So far, we've explored how your brain learned to observe, predict, and stay composed under pressure. But the deeper effects don't stop there. The same experiences that sharpened your awareness also change the way you connect with people, the way you solve problems, and even the way you see yourself. Let's continue. Sign 5. You depend on yourself more than most people. If there's one thing people often notice about you, it's this: you rarely ask for help. Even when you're overwhelmed, you tell yourself, "I'll figure it out." It's not because you think you're better than everyone else. It's because somewhere along the way, your brain learned that depending on others wasn't always safe. Maybe support was inconsistent. Maybe promises were broken. Maybe you simply learned that if something important needed to be done, you had to do it yourself. Psychologists sometimes describe this as adaptive self-reliance. Over time, your confidence doesn't come from praise. It comes from proving to yourself, again and again, that you can survive difficult situations. The upside? You're incredibly capable. People trust you during difficult moments because they know you'll find a solution. The downside? You often carry burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. Strength is valuable, but believing you must always be strong can quietly become another prison. Sign 6. You feel life more deeply than other people. Have you ever wondered why certain songs completely change your mood? Why one meaningful conversation stays with you for days? Or why watching someone suffer affects you so deeply? Your emotional world probably feels louder. Things that barely affect other people can stay in your mind for hours, not because you're weak, because your nervous system became highly responsive long ago. Neuroscientists have found that repeated emotional stress can make the brain more sensitive to emotional information. That means you don't just notice emotions, you experience them more intensely. This sensitivity has obvious challenges. You overthink conversations. You replay painful memories. You absorb the moods of people around you. But it also gives you something rare: compassion, creativity, the ability to comfort someone without needing the perfect words. You understand pain because you've spent time living beside it, and people often feel safe around you for reasons they can't explain. Pattern interrupt. Think about the last person who opened up to you. Did they tell you things they said they'd never told anyone else? If that happens often, there's probably a reason, and the next sign explains why. Sign 7. Trust is earned. Never assume. Some people trust almost immediately. You don't. Even when someone seems kind, part of your mind quietly waits. Not because you're negative, because you've learned that first impressions don't always reveal the whole story. So instead of believing words, you watch actions. Consistency matters more than charm. Promises matter less than follow-through. Psychologists refer to this as adaptive caution. Your brain automatically looks for patterns before deciding whether someone is emotionally safe. This can make new relationships slower, sometimes even frustrating. People may think you're distant, reserved, or difficult to know, but those who earn your trust discover something very different: someone deeply loyal, someone who values honesty over appearances, and someone who doesn't pretend connections are deeper than they really are. Quality has always mattered more to you than quantity. Sign 8. You see where things are headed. One conversation, one meeting, one small interaction. Sometimes that's all you need before you quietly think, this isn't going to end well. Then weeks, or even months later, exactly what you expected happens. People assume you're lucky, or unusually intuitive, but your brain isn't guessing. It's comparing today's situation with hundreds of similar patterns you've already experienced. Every expression, every habit, every inconsistency, your mind stores these details like pieces of a puzzle. Without realizing it, you're constantly predicting outcomes, whether it's friendships, relationships, or work situations. You often notice warning signs long before everyone else. The difficult part is that people usually don't believe you, not until the pattern becomes obvious. And by then, you've already seen it coming for a long time. At this point, one thing should be becoming clear. These abilities weren't random gifts, they were adaptations. Your brain developed them because, at one point in your life, paying close attention wasn't optional, it was necessary. But the final signs reveal something even more important. They explain why peace sometimes feels uncomfortable, why meaning matters more to you than success, and how experiences that once felt like weaknesses can eventually become one of your greatest strengths. We've talked about the ways hardship can sharpen perception, but there's one final truth that many people never discover. The same mind that learned to survive can also learn to heal, and that's where these last signs become so important. Sign 9. Peace can feel stranger than chaos. Imagine spending years expecting something to go wrong. Even after life becomes safer, your body may still behave as if danger is just around the corner. You finally have a quiet weekend, yet instead of feeling relaxed, you feel restless. You sit down to do nothing, and suddenly your mind races. You feel guilty for resting. You look for something to fix, something to organize, something to worry about. This isn't laziness, and it isn't failure. It's your nervous system following an old survival program. For years, stillness wasn't associated with safety. It was simply the pause before the next problem appeared, so your brain learned to stay alert, even when there was nothing left to fear. The good news? The brain is remarkably adaptable. Researchers call this neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to create new patterns throughout life, which means the habits that once protected you don't have to control your future forever. Healing isn't about forgetting your past, it's about teaching your nervous system that today is different from yesterday. Sign 10. Your pain became your greatest teacher. Many people spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort. You didn't have that option, so instead, you learned from it. Every difficult experience taught you something. How people hide fear behind anger, how loneliness can exist in a crowded room, how kindness often comes from people who have suffered themselves. Over time, your struggles became more than painful memories. They became a different way of seeing the world. Psychologists studying post-traumatic growth discovered something fascinating. Not everyone who experiences hardship becomes stronger, but many people report developing deeper empathy, stronger relationships, clearer priorities, and a greater appreciation for life. The experience itself wasn't the gift. The growth that followed could be. That's an important distinction. Pain should never be romanticized, but neither should the strength that can grow from facing it. Sometimes, the people who have walked through darkness become the ones most capable of helping others find the light. Pattern interrupt. Ask yourself one honest question. If every difficult experience disappeared from your past, would you still be the same person today? Or did those moments quietly shape strengths you've never fully acknowledged? The answer may reveal more about you than you expected. Sign 11. You can't live without meaning. Here's the final sign, and perhaps the most powerful one. You've probably noticed that surface-level living never satisfies you. A job that pays well but feels empty. Friendships built on small talk. Goals that impress everyone else, yet leave you feeling strangely unfulfilled. For some people, that's enough. For you, it isn't because once you've experienced life at its most uncertain, you stop chasing things that only look valuable from the outside. You begin searching for purpose instead. You want your work to matter, your relationships to be genuine, your time to mean something. This isn't perfectionism, it's perspective. Hard experiences often force people to ask questions much earlier than everyone else. What actually matters? Who can I truly trust? What kind of life is worth living? Those questions change people. And once you've started asking them, it's difficult to go back to living on autopilot. Conclusion. Here's the mistake society often makes. The person who notices everything is called anxious. The person who trusts slowly is called distant. The person who questions everything is called difficult. The person who searches for meaning is told they're overthinking. But sometimes, those aren't weaknesses at all. They're the fingerprints of a mind that learned to adapt under extraordinary circumstances. That doesn't mean hardship was fair. It doesn't mean suffering was necessary. And it certainly doesn't mean trauma is something anyone should wish for. What it does mean is that your story isn't defined only by what happened to you. It's also defined by what your mind built in response. Your awareness, your resilience, your empathy, your ability to understand people on a deeper level. Those qualities weren't accidents. They were forged through experience. Now the question is no longer, why did this happen to me? The better question is, how will I use what I've become? Because your past may explain you, but it never has to limit you. If one of these signs described you, let us know in the comments which one resonated the most. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Every week we explore the fascinating psychology behind human behavior, helping you better understand your mind, your relationships, and yourself. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning about the incredible mind you carry every single day.